Okay, so thanks to AI, right, you can now see how in my head I come onto stages. But as Ed's already introduced me, right, this is going to be a slightly different session to some of the ones that we've done over the past couple of days. So Ed's introduced me, you know, I'm an author, wrote a couple of books. To give you a bit of context, I used to run a trend and innovation agency, which is when I wrote Trend-Driven Innovation. We were a small company. We had offices mainly based in the UK, in London. We had a couple of people in New York, a couple of people in Singapore. And I exited that business in 2020. And since then, I wrote this book, The Future Normal, which I'm delighted to give you a copy of. We launched it at South by Southwest last year on the main stage to 2,000 people. And basically, I tell stories about innovation, right? And I help large companies, typically large companies, look out at the world, right, which we all agree is uncertain, volatile, right, or, you know, VUCA, and try and spot opportunities, right? And like Naveen said, right, my job for the last 15 years has been to provide an outsider's perspective, right, a different perspective from within your industry. And I'm not an AI guy, right? I mean, I will freely admit, I'm probably the least technical person in this room. But of course, you write a book called The Future Normal, you write a book called Trend-Driven Innovation. For the last 18 months, I've been talking a lot about AI. And at first, I had real imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't know anything about AI, right? But then, as I said, I realized that over 10 years of running this consumer trend business, right, we've seen the mobile wave, we've seen the social wave, right? A lot of these principles remain the same, right? How do you spot opportunities and how do you make them relevant to people? Right? My co-author, Rohit, who's based in Washington, you know, he likes to say, people who understand people will be the one who wins. And we've spoken a lot about this over the last couple of days, right? Jepson, just after lunch, we're saying, look, you know, you can't just talk technology to people, right? If you're going to bring the organization along with you, you need that organization to feel excited about it. You need to provide ways for them to participate with you, right? You can't push change down on people. And that is what I want us to do here today. Jepson, you slightly stole my thunder. I didn't realize you were going to do a live tech demo, because I was going to say, I'm about to do exactly what everyone always tells you not to do, a live tech demo. But I'm going to do something even more stupid, right, or even more something brave, is I'm going to turn it over to all of you guys, and we are going to do a collective live demo together, right? But just to take a step back, give you a bit of context to this kind of exercise that we're about to do. I'm obsessed with expectations, right? I think, I've given you the second book. The first book, the big idea, I'm going to save you guys are all busy people. I'm going to save you from reading the book. I wrote 300 pages on this, but I'll give you the big idea in 60 seconds, right? It was basically the secret to anticipating the future is to look at innovations, right? Often innovations in other sectors, in other markets, aimed at different demographics to the one you serve. But look at these innovations and try and understand how they're changing people's expectations, right? Because it's understanding people's expectations which will point you towards the opportunities. And so I'm obsessed with expectations, like where are people's expectations headed and how does that help you as executives understand what moves to make, right? So I was fascinated. I saw a study earlier this year that stopped me in my tracks, right? Because it said, and this is the obvious part, it's from Upwork, right? They said, Gen AI is taking over the world. Like 96% of C-suite leaders expect AI to increase the company's productivity, right? And we've heard about this. We've been talking about this for 2 days. So far, so obvious. But it was the second part that I loved in this study, because they said the problem is when you go and ask employees, right? You know, all the C-suite are like, yes, it's the best technology ever. You asked employees, and nearly 80%, 77%, say they have no idea how to unlock these productivity gains. And in fact, often the sentiment is they're decreasing people's productivity, right? Because your boss is saying, right, there you go, use Gen AI, right? Here you go, you can do 2 times as much. And we're still figuring out how to do that, right? And I thought this is fascinating, right? It's also terrifying. Like if you're running a business, this is very, very problematic. And I think there's two things at play here, right? Partially, this is just the obvious growing pains as we take on any new technology. You look back, whether it's electrification, it took kind of 50 years after electrification came to factories for Henry Ford to invent the production line, right? It took a long time to understand how we need to configure our operating models to take advantage of a technology. Same with e-commerce, right? The first e-commerce sites, you just whack up the same catalog that you had all along, and then here we are, we're doing e-commerce, right? Of course, it took time for people like Amazon to really understand the medium. But I also think, and Jepson, you alluded to the same thing, right, which is kind of, I guess, useful. We're singing from the same hymn sheet. There's also another question I have is what if generative AI isn't just about efficiency? Like, what if instead of trying to constantly use it for use cases which maybe it's not best suited for, right, automation efficiency, we also tap into the use cases where the hallucinations, the unpredictability are features and not bugs. And of course, I mean, this was what the whole of the last session was all about, right? We've seen this blossoming, this democratization of creativity when it comes to media, right? You've all heard about this. And this was, again, I say I'm not a technical guy. I did this as a kind of post the other day on LinkedIn just to show how easy it is. Like, I would have never thought a year ago that I would be training my own AI image generation model to create images of myself, right? It took me less than an hour, cost me $8, right? You upload 20 images of yourself into this Flux Laura. If anyone's interested, I can give you the instructions. Literally, it's like 5 instructions. You create your own little AI image generation model. The really funny thing about this, if you notice, is you start appearing in all the backgrounds of the images. It's kind of very weird, right? You get this, like, being John Malkovich kind of moment, right? But this was me saying I'm coming to New York and in Berlin and Vegas, etc. Right? And we all know about AI-generated video, right? You just type in a sentence and you get this. This is what Jepson was talking about. So again, we kind of understand that this is happening. And of course, you don't have to stretch your mind too far to know where this is going next, right? It's going to go not just into images, not just into movies, but increasingly in entirely digital worlds. So this is Roblox's kind of essentially ChatGPT style video game generator. So enabling the creators in Roblox to create virtual worlds just through text prompts, right? That are playable by other players, right? This is coming out later this year. Right, so amazing creativity, and we kind of we're familiar with this. I think this is an amazing quote from Scott Belsky, right? He is now the chief product officer of Adobe. He said, "We've shifted from being skills constrained to being imagination constrained." Right now, that the technical barrier, and this is Jepson's last session, right? The technical barrier to making things is collapsing to zero, and so now the question is, what will you imagine? Right, and so this is so far the conventional wisdom. This is the narrative that I'm sure you've all heard. But I think there's a less obvious narrative, which is more interesting for people like yourselves. And I just want to dive into that. And really the question I would ask is what does it mean when everyone can create stuff? Right? Because yes, we can create images, we can create videos, we can even create virtual worlds. But I think this is going to change actually the nature of business in quite profound ways. And so here's a kind of fun example, but I wanted to use it as an example of how we can unlock new business models. So there was this instance last year when this guy went on TikTok and he released this new song from Drake and The Weeknd. Again, everyone went, oh my God, 2 biggest stars collaborating. And then it's like, it's a completely synthetic song, right? He cloned their voices. Universal Music steamed in and pulled this from every streaming platform. I would have played it for you, but I didn't get it in time, right? They took it down. And they're saying this is a huge threat. And I was fascinated by Grimes's response, right? Elon Musk's ex-girlfriend. Because she said, I don't have a record label. She said, this is really interesting. Because she said, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a synthetic voice generator of my own voice. And I'm going to open this up to my fans, and I'm going to say, if you create music that sounds like me, and I like it and I release it with you, we'll split the royalties. Like, she's like, I'm going to channel all of this creative energy and use it to supercharge my output and unlock an entirely new business model. Right? And you're probably still sitting here thinking, okay, fine, Henry, why are you telling me examples of Grimes, right? We work in insurance and mainly insurance, or banking. But I think that this, just take it to a more kind of serious business topic, right? I think we will start to see this in all industries, right, in all companies, this opportunity. And I was really struck, okay, it's a completely different context, but Shell, right? I mean, you can be a little bit cynical, right? I am, about their commitment to the energy transition. But every year they host a renewable energy hackathon, right? It's kind of one of their initiatives. And they said in the last, they were detailing the results. I mean, in the last 2 years, they've seen an exponential increase in the number of submissions. Right? They used to get a few hundred. This last year, they had 5,000 teams submitting 9,000 proposals. And it was all about how to use agricultural waste for energy generation, right? And their hypothesis is that it's now becoming so much easier for like teams of students in, I think this is from NUS in Singapore, right? Or whatever it is, right? A university, wherever you are in the world, you can gather together and you can collaborate faster and you can flesh out. You have this half-baked idea and you can flesh it out and turn it into a kind of, a meaningful proposal much faster, right? Not just code, not just images, but actually around business ideas. And I think this is a really, profoundly interesting opportunity for every business. Right? And the question I would ask you is how will you harness the energy of the AI-powered crowd? Like, are there new business models? Are there new structures? And again, not all of this stuff is new, right? Hackathons and innovation days. I mean, we've been doing them for 10, 15 years. I've been writing about them for 10, 15 years. But they're really seeing this resurgence. And so now we get to the interactive part, right? Because we're going to do this together. And I want to do this as a group exercise, right? So this is where I get crazy. So you're going to have to do something, okay? So what I want to do, I'm conscious it's right at the end of quite a long 2 days, right? So we just kept it light, kept it fun. But what I would love you guys to do is to take out, everyone's got a notepad in front of them, right? Take out a sheet of paper. Right? Here's one I prepared earlier, right? Reflecting on Vinod's session yesterday. I'm going to give you a minute, okay? So you can start thinking about it now. I'm sure you all are. I'm going to get in. When I go to the next slide, I'm going to give you 1 minute to draw what has energized you about the last 2 days. What's an insight which you're going to take back, right? Something I know you'll tell your family about, right? So I drew, obviously, Vinod's vision of abundance in 2040, right? I thought it was very, very seductive, okay? So draw it. You can see here, it took me about a minute. It was a stick person, right? Very basic. I don't profess to be able to draw. I'm not asking about your drawing skills. Okay, but I just want you to humor me, because what I'm going to show you is it really doesn't matter if you can't draw. Okay, so is everyone ready? I'm going to start the timer. Okay, so we're going to take 1 minute to draw something that has energized you from the last 48 hours. And I have a little AI-generated song playing when we're doodling. Okay, you've got about 20 seconds left. It can be super rough. Don't worry. Don't sweat it. Okay. Everyone ready? Everyone have something on their paper. Now, this is where the magic happens, right? This is where the fun starts. Okay. Oh, you can't see, right? But hopefully everyone can scan the QR code, right? So if you take out your phones now and scan the QR codes, I'll do it with you. Okay. If you scan the QR code, it should take you to a little web page saying Visualize Futures, NYU. Okay. If anyone can't, if anyone's camera is not working, I can give you the bit. I made a little short link, so you can do it. Right. Now, if you click Activate Camera, it should pop up with a dialog box saying, can the browser allow your camera? Don't worry, there's no data stored at all. If you click Allow, sometimes people have disabled camera access from the browser, so if it doesn't work, that's what it'll be. But I can see a few people, yeah. And then it opens the camera. And then you just tap on the screen to take the photo, right? Most of you have figured it out. Everyone's got it, right? Now, if you scroll down, you'll see there is a text window. The only reason why we did this is because when we were testing it, someone drew a space rocket and the AI thought it was a fish, right? Because, you know, maybe your doodle's not that great. So you don't have to put anything in there, right? You can put nothing in there. On mine, you'll see I actually wrote some words on the image. So if you want to put any text, like, as I say, it's not about prompt engineering. Just put a couple of words as if you were describing it to your neighbor, right? What you've drawn, but you don't have to, right? You can just press generate images if you want. Okay. So, hopefully some of you have pressed generate already, right? Is everyone on board? Okay, because now this is where it gets really fun. So, has everyone seen their image coming up on their phone? Anyone need the QR code still? Okay, everyone's passed that. So, here's one I prepared earlier. Let's see. And now where it gets nice and fun, when this refreshes. And now, share this. Right, now we can see everyone's, right? So shout out when you see your image. So community, so someone was listening to Ed's session on the 9 C's at the beginning. Ed, you made an impact, you energized everyone in the first half an hour. The future is bright. Okay, look at this. If you want to do it again, if for whatever reason it missed your doodle, then you could just be able to refresh the window. Okay, a nice tree of knowledge. Someone just wants to test what their 3 legs. I love this. Okay, from sick to healthy. So we've got a healthy future, a people-centered future. This is nice. Automated management. So we're going to put ourselves out of a job, whoever is... But it's kind of interesting, right, for me. And I think if you look at some of them, as Jepson said, right, we're here, I've given you one shot. Right, you can see, can everyone see theirs coming in? There's a few less. Okay. So look, hopefully this was a moment of fun, right, in this session. But I want to just take a few moments to reflect on why I think this is a really interesting exercise. I mean, obviously I'm biased, I built it, right? But I think too often, right, as I said, I'm not a technical person. You guys are many of you are working in data and AI. One of the huge challenges, right, I hear when I speak to more generalist audiences is a fewfold, right? Often people go, I went to ChatGPT, I tried to use it, it's not very good. Okay, this is a pretty common response. And when I use this with mainstream audience, corporate audiences, a lot of the feedback we get is, I had no idea that AI could do this. Right? Still, many people. So just showing people that AI can be more than just words, more than just ChatGPT. The other reason why I use drawing, if you are really good at something, AI, yes, can help you do it faster, like Jepson said, but probably often many of the stuff, unless you really work at it, you're going to be a bit disappointed by the output. Where I think AI has a lot of power is giving you skills that you don't have, right? If you're not a data analyst, it can make you a passable data analyst, right? And the reason why I use drawing is because everyone thinks they can't draw. Like, I could see the fear in your face when I asked you to draw. People look terrified, right? And I'm not saying now that you are suddenly graphic designers, right? Visual communicators, but you're better than you were 10 minutes ago. And I think that's a really powerful analogy, or an analogy which I think is really important to stress to people. AI gives you new skills, or raises the floor. And the other reason why I think this is a really interesting exercise is because, again, we've heard this in this room over the last couple of days. People are scared about AI. The narrative is, it's going to take my job, right? That's the mainstream narrative. And what I want to say, I mean, we only had, it was a small group here, so we only had a few images, right? But if you have 50 or 100 or 200 images, right? What I always say is, most of these images are terrible, right? They're certainly, you're never going to put them in front of customers. This an idea that you press a button and you go from 0 to 10 is as we all know, nonsensical, right? There's a lot of work to be done. But what I think is really interesting about this is it makes an idea good enough to share with your colleagues. right? As I say, I mean, I'm a writer. I do a lot of work with kind of, innovation is a lot of the teams I work with. I often say to people, if you work in innovation or marketing or creativity, you're probably okay sharing your back of a napkin drawing. But many people who work in finance, right, I'm guessing that the cultures of your organizations is one of perfection, right? Insurance, you can't mess stuff up, right? It's important. And so empowering your teams to feel confident in sharing their ideas, it can be easier to discuss an idea that AI has generated with them than it is to share your idea just independently, right? So this is one of the reasons why I think AI is going to be really powerful at unlocking bottom-up innovation, unlocking frontline, the people closest to the problems who have ideas but are nervous to share them. With AI, can share them more confidently. And this is the final message that I say is like, Harvard and AIG, huge organizations. And how do organizations communicate today? We communicate in emails, text memos and PowerPoint slides, right? Like that's how organizations communicate. If you employ 10,000 people, then there's a huge chunk of that organization that does not communicate well in those mediums. So I'm not saying that suddenly everyone's going to start drawing, right? And we're going to move to visualization. But I'm saying, this is unlocking new ways to communicate within your organization that can allow new voices to bring ideas to the table. Right? And as we know, diversity matters when it comes to the quality of innovation ideas. And the final thing I say is, look, again, we're a very small group here, and again, we're from a couple of different companies. So I picked something like just a fun thing to draw, right? But when I've done this with whole companies, if you do this with 1,000 people from the same company and ask them to draw the future of their job, you can imagine, right? Within seconds, you've taken the visual pulse of that room in a way that was very hard to do otherwise. You can ask them to write it, but as I've said, you will get very different information if you write something rather than if you imagine people to draw it. So and then of course, if you have 1,000 images, right, you can start to download them and say, what are you seeing in this, right? What do we as an organization, how do my team see the future? Right? So I think, this is just, as I say, it's a kind of fun exercise, but I think it contains some quite profound insights about how we can bring people on the journey with us, make AI feel not just personal, but also collective, right? Make it feel visual, like people remember that stuff. And actually, again, we only had a couple of examples here, but we did one, and someone drew, I was asking them to draw a job of the future, and someone drew a holographic yoga teacher. And of course, what happened is you got 3 pictures of women doing yoga, right? And so, we see the biases that are coming out in AI, and people remember it when they see it. When your colleague has generated an image, or you've generated an image, and you see it come back biased, that resonates with you far more deeply than reading about it or hearing about it, right? So I think it's a really interesting exercise. I hope you found it fun. Thank you very much for having me. As I said, it was a very short exercise, but I really appreciate you guys, your good humor. As I said, I know you've sat in this classroom for a long time, so I hope it's a light interlude, but as I say, with some serious messages. So if you want to stay in touch, do feel free. Send me an email. I write a newsletter every week about really sharing stories about innovations and the opportunities they might present. Other than that, enjoy the book, and it's been a pleasure spending a couple of days with you. Thank you so much.